Chevreuse is a pyro character that is designed to breathe new life into the overloaded reaction, a reaction that has been as dead as Shatter up until now. But Chevreuse has changed the game. Now it's not just good for mining ores, it has actually become one of my favorite reactions. I'm not gonna lie, it might even be my new favorite thanks to Chevreuse. Overloaded is triggered when Pyro meets Electro or vice versa. Overloaded causes an explosion that deals AoE pyro damage in a 5-meter radius. This explosion causes significant knockback, enough to send weaker enemies flying. Like with Claymore attacks and most plunging or geo attacks, overloaded damage is also a blunt attack. This means it's great for destroying enemy shields. Overloaded damage ignores the target's defense and scales from character level and elemental mastery. It cannot deal critical hits, and only one instance of overloaded damage can be triggered on a single enemy every 0.5 seconds from the same attacker. If multiple sources trigger overloaded on the same target, it can only deal damage once every 0.1 seconds. So to consistently trigger overloaded, you need to either repeatedly switch between Pyro and Electro characters, or use characters that are capable of dealing Pyro and Electro while off-field. But I'll get into the characters and teams later. For now, let's get into how Chevrouse's talents work. Her normal attack can perform up to 4 strikes with a polearm. Her multipliers are very low, so I don't recommend leveling up her normal attack, unless you're a fanboy like me. On the other hand, her skill is her main ability. I recommend leveling up this talent first. Her skill can be tapped or held and will deal AoE pyro damage. After casting her skill, it will also call forth a Surging Blade that deals Usia-aligned pyro damage. This has a 10-second cooldown. In addition to dealing AoE pyro damage, it will also restore HP to your active character once every 2 seconds for 12 seconds. In total, she will heal 6 times for the duration of the effect. The amount healed is based on her max HP. Her healing multiplier is fairly low, so she's far from being one of the best healers. With a pure healing bonus and HP setup, I achieved a healing record for Chevreuse, totaling 19,482 by the end of her 12 seconds of healing. For reference, Farina heals 45,311 HP in the same amount of time with the same talent level, artifacts, and similar weapon as Chevreuse. Although Chevreuse did beat my level 70 C6 Barbara in the same test. Even with Barbara's C5 boosting her skill from level 6 to 9, she still only healed 13,674 HP in the same amount of time. Although because Barbara has a higher healing multiplier from her skill, if she were also level 90, then I suspect she would beat Chevreuse. With that said, because Chevreuse healing lasts for 12 seconds and there's a 15-second cooldown on her skill, there's only 3 seconds where she isn't able to provide healing to your active character. So she can heal frequently enough that you can use Chevreuse as the only healer in the party, with the right setup. But I'll get more into how to build her in a bit. First, let's get back on track. Chevreuse does have pretty good damage multipliers from her skill, but because you can only use it once every 15 seconds, she's also far from being one of the best damage dealers. Although her 4th constellation might help change that. With her C4, after casting her burst, the hold version of her skill won't go on cooldown until it's fired twice, or after 6 seconds. But I prefer to talk about things that I actually have experience with, so I won't discuss her constellations in much detail in this video. Once I unlock more of her constellations, I'll make a follow-up video, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. Back to her skill. In addition to tap or hold, she also has a 3rd mode. She overcharges her balls whenever a nearby character triggers an overloaded reaction. Her musket balls, that is. Although maybe I should say ball, because she can only have 1 overcharge ball at a time. The overcharge ball can only be fired while in hold mode, and is the most powerful way to use her skill. Her burst is pretty simple. Instead of shooting her balls from her musket, she fires an explosive grenade dealing AoE pyro damage. After the grenade hits, it splits into many secondary explosive shells which burst after a short interval, dealing pyro damage. This only costs 60 energy, and her skill generates 4 elemental particles. For reference, if you hold Bennett's skill, it will generate up to 3 particles. So some energy recharge substats or a battery in the party is all that is needed to burst frequently. The initial explosive grenade from her burst is her highest multiplier overall. Where Chevreuse really begins to shine is with her passive talents. Her best talent, Double Time March, decreases sprinting stamina consumption by 20%. This makes her a must-have for any roster. Okay, that's not really true. Her best abilities go to both of her other passive talents. Vanguard's Coordinated Tactics is her first passive talent you unlock. This ability is essentially the same thing as 4-piece VV. You know, the best artifact set for nearly any Animo character. When your party is comprised solely of Pyro and Electro characters, Chevreuse grants the Coordinated Tactics status effect to nearby party members. Whenever characters under this effect trigger Overloaded, the opponents affected by this overloaded reaction will have their Pyro and Electro resistance decreased by 40% for 6 seconds. So this makes it much easier to use than 4-piece VV. With their first constellation, characters under this Coordinated Tactics effect will also recover 6 energy when triggering Overloaded. This passive talent is amazing, but her final ability, Vanguard's Coordinated Tactics, is almost just as amazing. After Chevreuse fires an overcharged ball, nearby Pyro and Electro characters in the party gain 1% increased attack for every 1000 max HP Chevreuse has for an entire 30 seconds. At 40,000 HP, you reach the maximum 40% attack increase. However, this ability might sound a bit better on paper than in practice. The attack increase is based on the affected character's base attack, but when combined with their first passive, this makes her one of the best Pyro and Electro buffers in the game, so long as you stick to only having Pyro and Electro characters in the party. First, let's get into her best weapons and artifacts. Starting with her weapons, being as both her healing and attack bonuses both scale from her max HP, any weapon that increases HP is ideal. For a support build, her best in slot is either Rightful Reward or Black Tassel. Rightful Reward is her best option if she's using 4-piece Noblesse Oblige. Being as it's craftable, it's fairly easy to acquire and has a modest HP bonus. But most importantly, whenever the wielder is healed, it's capable of restoring a decent amount of energy while in combat. Being as Chevreuse's skill heals, she only needs to stay on field long enough for the healing to take effect. So if you use her skill, then immediately burst, by the time her secondary shells explode, she'll be healed and restore some energy. Just with a few refinements on this weapon, it should provide enough energy restoration that you can comfortably burst on every rotation, without the need for an energy recharge sands. Black Tassel is also a good option for most builds because of its high HP bonus. Favonius Lance and Catane Crossspear are also options, especially when using Noblesse Oblige. Overloaded does scale from Elemental Mastery, however it's a reaction that has a fairly low multiplier. It can't crit and only scales from character level, Elemental Mastery, and the enemy's Pyro resistance. In some quick testing, I was able to do 20k overloaded damage with 967 EM. So unlike most other reactions, it's not worth building your characters solely for overloaded damage. There are a couple of exceptions though. If you use someone that doesn't deal much damage, such as Toma or Shinobu. Like in Burgeon teams, Toma could deal more damage from overloaded than his skill and burst alone. But back to weapons. Staff of Homa is a much better option for Chevreuse than Catane Crossspear, as it has a lot of crit damage and a decent HP bonus. Like with the Staff of Homa, Deathmatch not only looks great on her, but it's also a really good option for DPS builds, although her key role is typically support due to her buffs and healing. But I'll get to that soon. There are a few other weapons that she can use for various builds, so to save time, here's a list of all the weapons that Chevreuse can take advantage of in one way or another. I've tried to organize the list in order of most to least relevant. Just keep in mind that some of these weapons are only on the list for their main stat. Some of their special effects might not work with Chevreuse or will work better if she's at least C2. Also keep in mind that if you do have her second constellation, attack percent weapons should also work. Although you should take this with a grain of salt. I'm not sure if it means base attack or not, and I can't test it because I only have her C1 right now. But now let's get to her best artifacts. I've already mentioned Noblesse Oblige, but when she's used as a support unit, 4-piece Song of Days Past is her second best option. This set gives a nice damage bonus for up to 5 of your active character's attacks. One downside to using this set on Chevreuse is that her healing is actually fairly weak, so with her skill at level 6 in this build, she isn't able to provide the maximum damage bonus, although it is close, so it's still well worth it to have her equipped with this set. You might be wondering about Ocean-Hued Clam. Well, in this case her healing is far from enough to make this set truly viable. With this build, the Exploding Bubble only deals around 4k damage. Maiden Beloved is a much better option if improving her healing is your goal. Chevreuse works really well with a variety of 2-piece artifacts since it's fairly easy to get 40,000 HP, or at least close. But HP percent and healing bonus sets are likely to be your best option for support Chevreuse. But like with the weapons, I categorized a list of her artifacts for support and DPS roles, although there's quite a bit more to cover here. Starting with one of my favorite builds for this role, she's able to deal damage and still provides the maximum attack buff from her second passive talent. The only downside is you'll probably want another healer in the group. I actually made a quick guide on HoYoLAB for a nearly identical build before making this video. I'll leave it in the description. Follow me on HoYoLAB after you check it out. I post guides and a random assortment of other Genshin Impact related content. While you're at it, you should make sure you're subscribed. These videos take me a very long time to create, so I'd really appreciate it if you take 2 seconds right now and scroll down and check. Subscribing is by far one of the best ways to show your support, and it's free. So earlier I mentioned that Chevreuse can be built to deal damage. There are a couple ways to do this. You can go all in on increasing her damage, or find a balance between that and increasing her attack buff. Your Crimson Witch of Flame should be her best in slot. I say should because I don't have this set yet, and therefore I haven't tested it. This set will also be more ideal if you have her 4th constellation. This would allow you to get more stacks from the 4-piece bonus by gaining the ability to fire her skill multiple times. Emblem of Severed Fate is a really great second option for dealing a lot of burst damage consistently. With this build, I was able to deal 46k from her explosive grenade, then around 6k for each of the secondary explosives on a regular basis. It's worth noting that I was using C6 Bennett, so Chevreuse gains an additional 15% pyro damage bonus. So in general, a pyro goblet is ideal for DPS Chevreuse. However, an HP goblet might work just as well for you depending on the makeup of your team. This team with C6 Bennett, Xianglan, and Fischl is probably the best party for this build. But that brings me to her best teams. Because of how Chevreuse and her passive talents work, you should really stick to Pyro and Electro characters only. Chevreuse will work better than an Anemo character with 4-piece VV in nearly every circumstance. One of the main reasons for this is that you don't have to use Chevreuse herself to decrease enemies' resistance. Whereas with an Anemo character, you want to make sure you swirl the element that you want buffed. They are also limited to only decreasing the resistance of one element, whereas Chevreuse will decrease the same amount of both Pyro and Electro resistances, without having to use Chevreuse on field. You just have to trigger Overloaded in an Electro and Pyro only team. Now that you know why you should use Chevreuse with Pyro and Electro characters, there are quite a few different Overloaded teams that Chevreuse can be built for. You can really use any Pyro and Electro character. Just keep in mind that when Chevreuse is in the team, you need to have at least one Electro character, such as this team with Xianglan, Thoma, and Keqing. You can build this team in quite a few ways. In no particular order, you can swap out either Xianglan or Thoma for Bennett, Fischl, Kujosara, Baido, Dia, Lisa, Yaimiko, Raiden Shogun, or even Dori or Shinobu. Speaking of Shinobu, she works best with Hyperbloom, but if you build her similarly, she also does quite well in overloaded teams. This team with Chevreuse, Shinobu, Dia, and Yanfei also works very well and is a ton of fun. Also try this team out with Linny. You can also swap her out for Yoimiya, Diluc, Xinyan, Klee, or Amber. Hu Tao is another option, but Shinobu might interfere with her playstyle. Where Chevreuse starts to run into issues is if you put her in a triple Electro team. She just doesn't apply enough Pyro to consistently trigger Overloaded. You're better off sticking with a second Pyro character in the party, ideally someone who can consistently apply Pyro while off field. But you probably get the idea now. So long as you stick to Electro and Pyro characters, Chevreuse is quite flexible. Also found that she's pretty comparable to Bennett. I really hope that you liked this video. It was a lot of fun to make, but it took a lot of time, and because it's just me creating these videos from scratch, I can really only work on one project at a time. But I felt Chevreuse was worth pausing my other projects right now so I could talk about her. She really is something special. I honestly didn't think that she would be as powerful as she is. It still blows my mind. She's also surprisingly flexible to build as well. Although she does work best as a support, she can still deal quite a bit of damage, with the right build that is. I really hope you liked this video. If you made it this far, and for some reason you aren't already subscribed, please take 2 seconds right now and click subscribe. YouTube has been unsubscribing people lately, so if you think you're subscribed already, please check. There's also a wide variety of benefits for my channel members, like free custom-made wallpapers, downloadable build infographics, and behind-the-scenes content. So if you want to help me keep the lights on, tap that join button or click the link in the description for more details. I really appreciate you for making it this far. You really are the best. I honestly mean that. I'll catch you in the next one. Subscribe and join.